Everyone, this is my UFC 318 recap. We're going to go over the results of the fights and overall for last Saturday. So I got 10 out of 14, which is not good in my eyes, but because we're always aiming for a perfect card. But you see here, I had 5 perfect picks, which were Holloway by decision, Pitbull by decision, Oliveira by decision, Allen by decision, and Ateba Gatier KO round 1. That one was probably the most obvious one out of everything. And overall for the night, I had a 4-pick parlay. To I was basically chasing my losses because about halfway through the card, I was down money and had lost all my long shot parlays, and I made a 4-pick parlay. And the final one on that one was the Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway, and I had Dustin Poirier selected. And when it came down to that last fight, I didn't really have faith in him to win, especially since he wasn't my pick. But at that point, I was able to just hedge my bet, put like $50 or something on Max Holloway to guarantee myself a win of like $48, which put me like $6 above what I had started at for the night, which is okay with me, right? As long as I don't take any big losses and I got back what I started with plus a couple bucks. Now, getting into the fights, like I said, for the main event of the night, Max Holloway, he did what I thought he would do. He's the younger, more hungry fighter. And Dustin Poirier was just basically at a point where it was his retirement fight. And win or lose, it was his retirement fight, which is strange considering where he is ranked in that division. And for Max, it would have been quite embarrassing to lose to someone in that position, especially for a third time. And just a little note, if you had seen online or in the fight itself, it did look like Max let off the gas in the first round when he had Dustin hurt. I think he really did. I think he was trying to carry him to the end and didn't want to finish him. Next, we had Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov. Now, in this fight, I was definitely surprised. I didn't think Paulo would win this fight. I'm not surprised he couldn't get a KO. That would have really surprised me. But after watching the fight, perhaps he could have gotten one by, all those shots to the body. He could have gotten a body shot KO. He looked good. I don't know what it was in this fight that made him perform differently than his past opponents. And I guess all that jitteriness that we saw beforehand in the press conference didn't affect his performance. So I don't know what the deal was in this fight with Roman Kopylov. Anyway, next, Daniel Rodriguez versus Kevin Holland. Now this is just one of those typical Kevin Holland moments. One of those typical fights he has. You would think him being up against almost a 40-year-old man. Yeah, I won't round up that high, but almost a 39-year-old man. When he's nearly 33, he has the height and reach on the dude, and he still gets beat up. The first 2 rounds, I would definitely give to D-Rod. The third round, maybe Kevin. But it was just disappointing. And even when he had D-Rod almost out of the fight, he wasn't able to capitalize on it, which is just infuriating. And coming into this fight, when I saw those odds, I was just like, I didn't trust it, but I was definitely conservative coming into this card. I should have had more parlays down than I did, and should have been fading this dude, Kevin. Next, another boring fight by Patricio Pitbull. And although this time he did come out on the winning side, it was still boring. And this was a correct pick of mine. I just felt like this fight was kind of gift wrapped for Patricio. They don't want to make him look like too horrible, right? He has this rep from previous organization, and he just got, outclassed or dominated by Yair. They had to give him someone who would give him a somewhat of a fight, but not enough to defeat him. That was my thinking going into this fight, and that's what it looked like. So that was correct. Next, another fight with huge difference in odds. And I'm pretty sure I got this one wrong. Let me just make sure. Yeah. I got tricked. I thought if Michael Johnson was going to win this fight, it would be by like a KO shot. Right? Other than that, I figured he didn't have what it takes to keep up the pace with such a younger fighter and taller fighter with a longer reach. I don't know what this dude's issue is, Sal Huber, but just in total awe of this fight itself. I knew Michael Johnson wasn't like a bum or anything. I just thought he would, at 39, he would kind of just be live early on for the KO, and if that didn't come to fruition, he would maybe just survive to the end, and Daniel would win a decision. But I will definitely take this result in consideration for MJ's next fight. Hopefully that'll be soon and not another 7 months. Now this one was I guess pretty spot on. Yeah, Vinicius Oliveira had him by decision, and that's what happened. I mean, he had moments where he looked like he might get the finish, but Kyler Phillips was able to survive. And Kyler Phillips didn't really offer much in return. Nothing too significant. Vinicius dominated the entire time. And it was kind of surprising, but at the same time, kind of not. Because Vinicius is so new to the UFC. You wouldn't think he'd be getting these wins like this. But, considering his last win versus Saeed Nurmagomedov, I thought if he's able to do that to Saeed, who's a well-rounded Dagestani, he should be able to do it at Kyler Phillips, and that is exactly what he did. Next, this was a correct pick. A perfect pick, I believe. Another perfect pick. Yeah, I just thought Brendan Allen had more skills coming into this fight, which he kind of showed. He didn't show too much of his ground game. It seemed like they both wanted to fight most of the fight on the feet. Not that Vettori had the option of that, but I think Brendan Allen did. And he was content with that. I guess because they had that altercation in the hotel. They wanted to just punch each other in the face. But Brendan Allen was able to get him to the ground. And I think he almost had a choke at one point. Or he could have had a choke. I'm surprised he didn't try and hold that in place and maybe even just go for I don't know if it's called a neck crank or just when you choke on the chin and you try and crack the chin. A lot of fighters tap to that. He didn't attempt to do that, which was surprising. But yeah, this was correct pick. You don't really see Marvin Vittori do much other than box, and when he's up against someone who has more to offer than that, you should go with them. And yeah, we just know Marvin's a tough guy who can take a lot of damage and survive, but yeah. Next, now this fight was close. I thought Francisco Prado won that fight because I think he had he had more ground control in that fight, or a lot of it, which I thought should have given him the fight. But yeah, as you can see there, it says decision split. Yeah, so that's one of the ones I had incorrect. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this fight. It was close, as the odds showed. Now this one was my perfect pick. Another one of my perfect picks. Yeah, it was, as I said in my prediction video, like Robert Valentin was kind of overhyped. One of my Twitter posts, I said he's supposed to be like this Viking warrior dude, but he hasn't been performing, and he's gotten knocked out prior to this. And we saw how Ateba fought in his last two fights. This dude just goes full force, kind of like Vinicius Oliveira. Similar to that. He's a lot bigger. Dang, and he's only 23. So I would keep picking this dude unless I don't recall seeing much ground game from him. So unless they match him up with someone who can potentially just avoid the striking and take him down and hold him down, until then, I'll be picking Ateba. Next, Islam Dulatov versus Adam Fugit. Now this one I had my concerns because we hadn't seen Islam in the UFC yet. But he definitely performed to the expectations of the odds. And although that's the case, I will say Adam Fugit looked decent early on. He was getting landed on, but he was staying safe, staying slick, returning his own offense. And yeah, so he wasn't as horrible as I thought he'd be in this matchup. Just considering his performance, and it might not seem that way since he got KO'd in round one, but it was towards the end. I don't know if he lost focus. Kind of seemed like they were, they're smiling at each other. Or when Adam Fugit would land something, he kind of like smiled, like, oh, I got you. Like, I don't know. I wonder what it would have been if he had just stayed focused and not try and do all that gamesmanship. Perhaps the fight could have gone longer for him. But either way, Islam looked good out there. And another thing to consider, which I didn't know coming into this fight, which would have just kind of enforced or supported my pick of Islam, is that I think he's quite famous or has a good following. Apparently he's some sort of model. But yeah, next, Jimmy Crute versus Marcin Prachnio. Yeah, so I got the rest of these correct, but I thought perhaps Marcin Prachnio would have more to offer. I know he's older, but these guys are heavyweights, so usually they can fight good going on to the tail end of their careers. But Jimmy Crute was able to do what he did and get a good submission in round one. So this was, I guess, spot on by the odds and people's opinions. Most people were picking Jimmy Crute. And yeah, next, Ryan Spann. Yeah, I had Ryan Spann. This was kind of similar to I guess for this fight, I was kind of just looking at their records, their recent record of opponents. And it just seemed to me that Ryan Spann had a little more to offer overall in the fight, as far as striking and ground game. Kind of like what I said about the Brendan Allen versus Marvin Vettori fight. It's like a similar situation here. Like Lucas Bresky he could get a KO, but if he doesn't, so can Ryan Spann, and also I think Ryan Spann had the advantage on the ground, which he did. That's why he got a submission. Next, we had Bruno Ferreira versus Jackson McVee. Now, this was another correct pick. I think I put down that he would get a KO, but he got a submission. And he definitely could have gotten a KO. Especially, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on Jackson McVee, but, you know, he got rocked by a punch in the face, and it shook him, right? I mean, you can't blame the guy, right? But he also took a kick to the leg, which, you know, you saw him wince and kind of, it was clear as day that it hurt. And that he was showing the hurt. Like, some fighters, when they get kicked and it hurts, they keep their game face on and they keep fighting. But this dude took that kick and he was like, oh. I mean, you could see it in his face, and that's not a good thing to see from a fighter, or especially a professional fighter. But, yeah, I definitely was... Yeah, I was correct about this fight. It's hard to know about these newbies coming into the UFC, but the odds were right about this. It wasn't a trick. You know, I wasn't sure between this fight and the Islam Dulatov fight, like which one was a trap, if any of them were. If anything, I thought the Adam Fugit Islam Dulatov fight was the trap, especially since Adam Fugit had so much experience in the UFC, you know, compared to Jackson McVee. Anyway, next we had Carly Judice versus Nicola Kalari. Yeah, Carly Judice looked good. She looks good. She kind of fights like Dustin Poirier. And also apparently she's a native to Louisiana, which only should have enforced your confidence in picking Carly Judice. But she's slick, has great striking, great takedown defense, and on top of all that, she's always looking to land damaging shots, like looking for the finish throughout the whole fight. Look great. And just to look down here, so those are the results. So that bout was canceled. Ikram Bruno Ferreira. All right, that should have given you more confidence that the short notice newbie dude in the UFC was going to lose to Bruno, since Bruno was scheduled for this week. And yeah, so those are the results. I'm happy I didn't lose any money. I made $6. There's this dude on Twitter who was posting his wins. I don't recall the name at this moment, and I don't think I have it up on Twitter, but I'm definitely going to tell some of his bets for next week. Jay Singh, I think it was Jay Singh, but he did great. So I'm definitely going to be telling his bets. And let me know in the comments if you want anything. And see y'all later in the week for my picks for the next card.